Hey, it's Rabbi Lewis wishing you an early Shabbat shalom. And quick story here. I was at a comedy show the other night, and the comedian was trying to do some crowd work, and he goes, "Who's married here?" Well, I'm the only one in the room who raised my hand, and they said, "How long?" And I said, 23 years. And they said, "Congratulations." And I said, what's the secret to a good marriage? I thought about it for a second, trying to think of something pithy, but I just said, learning how to say you're sorry. And the comedian said, "Well, that's great. You have to learn how to say you're sorry. What a great thing." And I cut him off and I said, "Actually, she finally figured it out." Well, the audible gasp in the room. Of course, I was kidding. But apropos of that, I also saw a meme recently on social media that said 50% of marriage is shouting "what" from the other room. And that's pretty true also. And, why do we have to repeat ourselves? Usually because we didn't hear it, or we actually are, "Hey, can you unload the dishwasher?" "What?" "Didn't quite hear that." "I said, can you unload the dishwasher?" "What?" "I didn't quite hear that." Sometimes it's selective hearing. I actually have a pair of socks that say selective hearing specialist. But a lot of times when we shout from the other side of the room, the other person legitimately doesn't hear it because they're distracted or watching something or reading something, and they say, "What?" It's fair, right? Anyhow, some things need to be repeated. I'm just going to pose this for a second. What if the thing that we shouted from the other side of the house was, "I love you," and you said, "What?" Not because you didn't hear it, but just simply because you wanted to hear it again. A man can dream. Anyhow, repetition. We're opening up the book of Deuteronomy this week, PARASHAT DEVARIM. And, in Hebrew, Devarim just means words. These are the words that Moses spoke. And in Greek, Deuteronomy means repetition. So there's a generally perceived, pretty accurate perception that a lot of Deuteronomy is repeating things that have already been said. And the question that we've often asked over the years is why? Why do things need to get repeated? One explanation that was from Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch suggested that in the earlier iterations of these particular commands that were spoken the first time, that it was God language. And the ones that were significantly important here needed to be repeated in human language. That's why it says these are the words that Moses spoke, so that in human speech, taking God's speech and putting it into a way that was easily understandable by the people was what was necessary. And other explanations are comparable in saying that these rules here that will be repeated are important enough that it's kind of like highlighting, underscoring them, making sure that it's demonstrated that these are the ones that are the most essential, the most important. And of course, we could debate and argue each one and say, is that really the most important one? But that's not the idea. The idea is that something that is worth being learned or known really needs to be repeated again and again to demonstrate how significant it is. Like the most important command in the Torah is to not oppress a stranger, and that's why it's repeated more than 30 times throughout the Torah, according to our tradition, is because that is the most important commandment that they want to get across to us, that the Torah wants to get across to us. And so, as we think about the purpose of words and repeating them, one thing to remember is it's important not to be overly verbose, but it's also important that if we need clarification, that it's okay to ask what sometimes. Sometimes because we want to make sure that we have clarity on what's being requested, but also because sometimes the message that we hear is so good, like "I love you" shouting from the other side of the house, that you do like to hear it again. But most importantly, the repetition is so that truly good values and truly good words do come across. And by repeating them multiple times, we show how valued they are. So next time that you hear a rabbi like me repeat themselves, it's not just because we forgot that we said it. Maybe it's because we actually wanted to show that we found it important. But in the great words of the late, great Robin Williams, Did you know that in the dictionary under redundant, it says, see redundant? Anyhow, those are my thoughts for this Shabbat. I hope you have a Shabbat Shalom. I hope to see a lot of you at family service and dinner tonight. Shabbat Shalom.